So I just bought my first two-bed property, and no one tells you how stressful this process really is. So as a property noob, I'm sharing some tips with you that I went through. The first thing to decide is whether I wanted a new build or an old build. I've always said old build just because look how much space, how much storage you get, and the construction is so much better. You might have to do a bit of reno work, but there's always space to add value, whereas a new build, I'm paying a premium price for less square footage and storage. Like, look at the sheer size of this bedroom. Like, I could have a walk-in, and my spare bedroom is a decent size and has so much storage. I don't have to deal with high service charges. And look at the size of my bathroom. That washing machine's moving though. Make sure you follow the property series for more tips.
I love this. All right, so look, go follow the creator. Shout out to the creator in the description. But it's interesting, there's a few points that came up in this video that I think are super valuable, especially for those of us who are actually keen on doing more in the property field. The first one is, she said she had to decide on whether she wanted a new build or an old build, and she said she opted for an older build. Cha-ching, give a big green tick to that. Not for the exact same reasons that were shared. So let's jump into these reasons, because I think this will be helpful for you to have a clearer rationale as to why older builds typically are better investments than newer builds. Now, she mentioned the service charge. We'll come on to that later on, but let's just touch the new build versus old build specific part first. The first instance is this: new builds have a more advanced approach to maximizing space. What does that mean? That means if you're buying a new build today, the developer of that new build, whether it's a large scale developer or a small boutique developer, has fought to the deepest level of their mind's ability to maximize that space. That means they've put rooms in areas where people have questioned should there be rooms. They've put cabinets in areas where people have questioned there should be cabinets. And they've usually placed kitchens in places where people have even questioned should there be kitchens. Now, the reason this is so important is because this means the space is fully maximized. The space is already fully utilized. Now, are there opportunities for creative people like you and me to still see where we can add value in a new build property? The answer is in some cases, yes. But what we have to understand is, by virtue of that developer desiring to maximize their output from their development, i.e. how much money they can get out when they sell all of those units, the key for them is going to be to make sure that they've got the maximized footprint that they can get at the point of their planning approval. And this is the reason why 9 times out of 10, new build properties just don't tend to stack up. But if we take that as a foundation, okay, new build versus old build, we can now start extrapolating and looking into the other elements of what she's mentioned. The second thing she mentioned, which I want to bring forward, which I think is important, is the service charge. And she's absolutely right. In older buildings, because they've been existing for a lot longer of a time, what generally that tends to mean is that that older building has an established presence and a historic framework and setting of the service charge. So you're not going to just turn around tomorrow and say the service charge is going to be £6,000 a year or £7,000 a year. That's not going to happen out of the blue. The reason it's not going to happen out of the blue is because prior to that, we've had a 7-year, 8-year, 10-year, 12-year, 20-year, 100 years in many cases of the service charge slowly creeping up to wherever it is right now. So in most older properties, you're probably going to find, if you're in London, that the service charge throughout a year is around £2,000, maybe maximum £3,000. But if you go further afield outside of London, again, as she mentioned, newer builds, newer developments, then you're going to start seeing much higher and much more exorbitant service charges on those properties. Now, the second point she made, which I'm going to bring up third, which I think is very, very important, is she said in older properties, there's always opportunities to add value. Okay. This is something I do disagree with. Okay. I believe there's more opportunities, but I don't think there's always opportunities. And the reason why is because, well, we saw it in kind of the video, right? They had a washing machine embedded in a wall which I don't think I've ever seen before inside of a bathroom. Now, why has that happened? That's happened because whoever was living there before thought to some degree that that would be a space saver, or that would be an opportunity to take advantage and do something maybe slightly different or slightly quirky, but to advantage them as people living in the property. And this happens all of the time. Why? Because people look at their existing footprint, their existing floor plan, and think to themselves, what's the best they can do with what they have? Now, this is the reason why I don't just advocate buy an old property, because there's always going to be an opportunity for you to develop it. Like, there's not always going to be an opportunity to develop it, because even old properties have been bought by newer people and have been refurbished, changed, developed, etc. So one of the big lessons I think we should all take from this video is don't just assume one size fits all. I remember a number of years ago when I first got an interest in property, hearing so many people say that old adage, you can't go wrong with property. And that old adage is very similar as anything we do when we just principalize it, right? And I know that's not a word, but I'm making it up for the sake of this video, because I want you to understand exactly what happens in the property landscape, in the wealth creation landscape, in the finance landscape, in the health landscape. In so many of these landscapes, people take an idea that works for some and turn it into some principle or some rule as though it works for all. And the reality is, real principles are real principles. Real principles always work, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or as one of my coaches loves to say, and twice on Sunday. Like, the reality is, real principles always work. They can't be broken. The law of gravity, for example, is working every single day and twice on Sundays. And equally, the first law of thermodynamics, they say the law of energy. Everything is energy. It's neither created nor destroyed. It's only ever transferred. Why is this important? It's important because it's never going to change. That is a principle. So I want us to be very mindful that when we're calling things principles, or when we're generalizing things, like I always only buy old properties because there's always opportunities to refurbish them, or there's always opportunities to add value to them, that's not the truth, because it's not a principle. Okay. Now, it might be a commonality. It might be something that happens more often than obviously with new builds, but it doesn't make it a fact, and it definitely doesn't make it a truth, and it surely doesn't make it a principle. So I want you to think about this. If you're someone who's endeavoring to get into your first property, congratulations to the creator of that video, then go for it, but have your wits about you, as they say. Make sure that you understand the difference between the principles and just simple practices. Make sure you understand about what's good to do. Now, here's a simple lesson for every and any one of you who are thinking about taking advantage of this opportunity and jumping forward and getting into property. And maybe now from this video, you're saying to yourself, you know what, I don't think I'm going for the new build. I think I'm actually going to start looking for some older properties. Here's a big nugget for you. The first rule of property investment, which most people do not follow, because most people aren't investing in property. Yes, many people are buying properties. Yes, many people own many properties. Yes, many people inherit properties, but very few people are investing in property. First rule of property investment is we make our money when we buy. Now, just to give you a simple example, in 2017, my wife and I purchased a property that was valued at £240,000. A few months after that Rick's valuation was done, my wife and I purchased that property for £136,000. Now, if you do the maths on that, if you're quick with the maths, you will know that's a difference of a 100 and thereabouts £4,000 change difference, right? From the valuation to the price of acquisition. Now, why is this important? It's important because it's a simple example to showcase to you what we mean when we say we make our money when we buy. Now, to be honest, it doesn't really matter what happens with that property the next day, the day after, right? In most cases, when you've locked in £100,000 or thereabouts of equity at the signing of a transaction, you have made your money when you buy. You've secured the value that you are going to be able to extrapolate or take out at some point from that property. And this is why the first law of property investment for those of us who are investing in property is you make your money when you buy. Now, I don't know about you, but if you've got any other stories similar to this that have come true, let us know in the comments comments below. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear stories of, again, you're just purchasing your first property, you're thinking about the whole dichotomy between new build or old build, or are you someone who's more advanced and you've done exactly what I've shared in this video, where you've been able to acquire something and make sure you've made your money when you buy it? Because this is the game changer. This is the difference maker, especially in this current climate where people are unable to sell their properties, where people are finding negative equity situations, where people are saying to themselves, hold on a minute, I went into this property project and I thought it was going to be okay, but now I'm realizing that I'm potentially losing my shirt. And for those of you who don't know what losing your shirt is, it just means I'm losing. All right, it's an old property adage, just like when you buy a lemon. All right, so I don't desire for you to end up in any of those situations. My prayer is that you utilize this as your wealth education so you can move further faster in your future and get your transformation. With that being said, as I usually say, small keys open big doors. Good day, God bless. You know what to do. If you got value from this video, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Let's go.
Small keys open big doors.